Welcome to AskPsychSessions with Marianne Lloyd, where we ask some of the best teachers we know questions from you, our audience. If you have a question or an idea for a conversation, please visit bit.ly/AskPsychSessions. That's bit.ly/AskPsychSessions. All one word, all lowercase. And here's our next question.
Thanks for joining us today. Our next guest is Gabrielle Smith from Texas Women's University. Thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So before we jump in to talking about teaching, could you let the listeners know what it is you teach and maybe a little bit about the class sizes and anything about Texas Women's University, which, I'll admit as someone from New Jersey isn't a place that I'm familiar with.
Okay, so my classes are typically somewhere between 25 and 60 students at any given time. I teach courses such as health disparities, psychology in the media. I also teach health psych, professional development, as well as some special topics courses on the psychology of the African American experience and global Blackness. Texas Women's University is a public institution that mission is primarily about uplifting women. However, we are a co-ed institution, although we do have mostly women enrolled. It's a pretty diverse student population, more diverse than what you typically see in a lot of other public institutions. And we're in North Texas. So I think I answered all of your questions.
You did. You did a great job. And so first of all, that is a fascinating array of classes. Whenever I hear things like that, I start to feel a little sheepish about my research methods and cognitive psychology pedigree, because I think that work that you do is, I would assume students are excited about taking those courses. Do they come in with a level of excitement and interest? And we can also talk about that. Maybe that then comes sort of at a cost when you realize how much, also work it is in addition to being interesting. But do you find that students are excited to come in?
Yes. It is a combination of excitement, but then also I've been known to, push my students to explore. And sometimes, most often my courses can be writing heavy. And I think for whatever reason, a lot of students shy away from wanting to write, but I think it is important as a psychology major. The more you write, the better you become at writing. And so I think trying to remove that fear and that anxiety around writing, and then really sparking an interest in research broadly defined. I think students often find the word, and you probably see this in research methods too, like the word research is very scary. The word stats is scary. And so I think like demystifying these things as not always so weighted, but something that you should be comfortable doing or be open to becoming more comfortable doing as a psychology major. Because those are some of the things that, even outside of pursuing psychology as a career, employers really do like psychology majors for these reasons. So like communication skills, research skills. And so as someone, I teach professional development every semester. So I'm always, in every class that I teach, I'm always thinking about the deliverables post-graduation. And I think those writing skills and those research skills in the context of these really interesting topics, or at least they're interesting to me. And I think students come in with a particular layer of interest, really learning how to cultivate those skills or put them to use as they've been trained in their foundational courses. When they come to classes like health disparities, they're able to utilize those skill sets in ways that are a little bit more engaged with things like healthcare, which is a really big topic right now, and how disparities can manifest in the world around us.
So I would maybe we'll get to some more specifics about your particular teaching, but I think that just even having a course on health disparities, I don't think that that's incredibly common. And I'll just admit that, it's something that I think that, thanks to a TED Talk, I've started to recognize more in ways, right? Sort of this late to the game of understanding the way the world is playing out. So maybe before you talk about how you teach that class, can you just give us a quick overview about what does that course look like? And maybe are you teaching that right now in a pandemic? Have you had to pivot? So maybe your short synopsis of health disparities, and then sort of let us know. I know you just said you often teach professional development, but I didn't catch if it was right now or not. Kind of how are you even teaching right now? Hybrid, in person, synchronous, asynchronous, some of that detail, please.
So all of my courses right now are online, and they are all asynchronous. And so that is a pivot. I am a discussion heavy type of professor. And so not having that live action in class engagement has been difficult and different. So I've been exploring different ways to try to keep some type of engagement with my class while also being asynchronous and online. So I am teaching professional development and health disparities both right now. And with health disparities, one of the things that I'm doing with this course is kind of giving them both a broad overview of health disparities and health equity and equality and all of these different terms that you hear in the news, but you often hear them used interchangeably. And we often only hear about health disparities as it relates to like particular groups that are salient in the conversations that are occurring in the media at any given time, but really exploring like accessibility and disparities related to things like ability status, and sexuality and all of these other layers that we aren't often talking about, but are relevant to this conversation of health disparities, while also talking about race and gender and socioeconomic status. And then also talking about how all of these things do not exist in a vacuum. And so the experiences that individuals are having within their experiences with the healthcare system are informed and modified by all of these different layers of identity that are occurring in the space in real time. And so often when we encounter them in a classroom, we're taught about them isolated, or we're looking at it in the textbook and not really relating to it. And so I'm having my students really engage with local data and local interventions, so local data about health disparities in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and then also like interventions and programs and policies that are influencing how people who are impacted by health disparities are able to navigate these spaces. And then their end of the semester project is to propose some type of intervention that they think, based off of what they've been researching all semester, what they think would be a meaningful intervention for this area. So really trying to bring it home and local, instead of just talking about it grand and allowing some distance. I wanted it to be closer. And then it's also good to have them have some exposure to particular agencies that they can volunteer or intern with, or provide any of their expertise as students and residents of the area to these organizations as well. And so I think that also brings a layer of interest to it as well.
That's great. And I just want to talk for an hour about how you in some ways sound just like like if Eric listens to this episode, like someone that's so well poised to help their students understand the value of the psychology degree. You previously referenced writing and communication, but now also, helping students think very specifically about how what they're learning in their class connects into their community. So that's really terrific. And I would imagine also probably eye-opening for some of the students if they haven't themselves experienced or within their family some of these disparities impacting them. I would like to maybe scoot back. You did mention that you typically do a lot of discussion in class, and I can certainly see how that would flow very naturally from what you just described. So what are you doing instead now that you're asynchronous to replicate that, or you're not even trying to replicate that? You're doing something else to keep things engaging.
So I have my students doing Perusal, which you can upload articles on the platform and then have students have kind of conversations with each other and with you pertaining to the material in the article. And that seems to be working okay. Of course, it's not as lively in real time as the in-classroom experience, but I do think that something that's happening by using Perusal that doesn't naturally happen in class is that students are really learning how to read articles because they're able to not just talk about it in class and say, oh, I didn't get that at all from when I read it, but I don't know how that other student did. But they can see, they're highlighting the sections that they're talking about and referencing the material and on the actual article. And I see students who are weaker in that area or just inexperienced with navigating journal articles, learning and growing from how the other students are talking about it, who maybe have a little bit more experience from other courses with reading journal articles. So I feel like while it is less engaging for me because I'm not able to have that real time engagement with students. And hopefully they miss talking to me too, because I love talking to them. There is that benefit of really exploring that navigation of a journal article and really breaking it down and what to pay attention to and how to critique appropriately, and even how to think about what it could have future directions or how it ties to other articles or other things that we're talking about in class. So it's, there's good and bad to it, I think.
I mean, it sounds like a big win, and I'm with you. Part of what I enjoy about teaching is spending time with the students, but it is incredibly appealing to me that really understanding and processing journal articles is really a nice trade-off if you're going to make a trade-off. I haven't used Perusal, so is it sort of like you're almost like marking up the text, like when you get comments on a manuscript and people can respond to one another? Is that kind of like an interactive PDF? Just to sort of picture it.
Yes. And it doesn't have to just be journal articles. There's a variety of other things that you can use. I think they have some partnerships with certain textbook companies where you can actually upload the textbook and have them. I typically don't use textbooks for most of my courses, but they do have that function available for you. And so this is my first time using it this semester. I really just kind of stumbled across it when I was Googling how to have an engaging online class. So, but it seems to be working fairly well. There's some kinks, but I do think that I like it better than discussion board.
It does sound more interactive than a discussion board would be, because if people, really want to fight about the one graph, my understanding with discussion boards is it's often, you need to go comment on 3 people's posts. But if really the interesting part is how you interpret figure 4, it really gives the students the space to focus there. One question I have about your role, do you also pop in and correct, misunderstandings perhaps, or like missing nuance? If students seem off, do you go directly into that and talk about it? Do you send people a message? there's some level of risk taking the students are taking to sort of put their thoughts right out there where everyone can see. So I'm just wondering how you, create like sort of a trust culture. How much are these low stakes? Where do you have to be super correct to do well? Maybe also talk about the grading piece as well as your engagement with their comments.
Yes. So I do kind of go in and look at what the students are talking about, and making sure that there's not anything untowards on the in Perusal. And also students can report each other. And so those are the comments that I really kind of go in and attend to. And Perusal has some system. I can't really explain it as fully as maybe someone who works for Perusal could, but it also has a system to notify you about like flagging comments that it believes you need to review as the instructor. And so I attend to those as well. Perusal has a grading system. I am not quite sure if it's better than just going in and doing it yourself. It's definitely faster, but I have had to go in and correct some grades. It has a system of how much students post and what type of, like, the length of their posting and how much time they spend reading the article. And you can play around with the settings to have Perusal generate a grade for you. However, like almost anything computer generated is not perfect. So you would have to go in and just double check sometimes. But I've alerted my students that if they feel as though there's something off about the grade that they are given by Perusal, then they can alert me and I can double check and see what went awry.
That sounds great. I'm always happier to go in and make some edits rather than necessarily building everything from scratch.
Yes.
Well, this was incredibly helpful. Do you have any other nuggets about something that's working well in your asynchronous courses right now that you'd like to share for people to maybe give a try?
I also do group work, and I know that's something that most people don't like. But I think that while it's difficult to navigate or have the students connect virtually, when they do, I've had so many students reach out and say, especially the students who are, living alone or not really having that much social engagement right now during the pandemic, reach out and say, this is like, I was upset about the group virtually, but this has been great because I have people to talk to and engage with, and this project is going like smoother because we have all of these different ideas. And so I think that seems to be working, but their final project isn't due until the end of the semester. So I can't really say for sure how well it has worked yet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you sort of nailed it, right? But the good parts of group work, going back to some of your comments before, are that most of us are eventually going to have to work with other people.
Yes.
So it's type 2 fun, I guess. It may not be fun while it's happening, but it might be fun later. So, all right. Yeah. Well, you've encouraged me as I start to think about what my spring semester courses are going to look like. I'm definitely going to look into employing both of those because I like group work because it means that, fewer total items to grade is the other, right? The professor perk. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And I think that our listeners will also find this helpful, whether they're facing asynchronous or synchronous work while we're in this virtual space. So thank you. Take care.
Okay. Thanks so much for having me.